Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hey, everybody. What's happening? Here we are talking about prayer, talking about free will, talking about prayer and free will. Here we go. And we're talking about Larimar. You guys know what Larimar is? This is blue stone. It's only found in the Dominican Republic. Very cool. There's your lesson for today. Okay, so prayer and free will. So, with everything going on in the world, the last podcast I did had to do with this too. It's what I'm seeing is everybody wanting to do good and be good and really putting effort into that. But we have to slow down and understand what we're doing and the dynamics of it, because like we walk around saying things that sound good that in my opinion don't make much sense. So I'll preface this by saying this. I made a post about this a little while ago, and a friend of mine, we went back and forth with a couple comments because he sees it differently, which is fine. If you see it differently, God bless you. Nothing. You all have the right to your own opinion and your own perspectives. So I'm not trying to talk you into anything. I'm just saying how I see things, because that's all I can do. So the way I see it is I try to understand the dynamics of things, the root cause of things. So therefore I can use them properly. Right? So if we dance around on the surface, then we do things that don't make sense, and then we wonder why they don't work. Right? So like I was raised Catholic. So when I looked at a lot of the things that was being taught in my particular church and the way that it was being taught, and also the way that I perceived it, because I bet you that there were other kids in my same church, in my same class, that interpreted what was being taught in a different way, right? We're very different individuals. We all interpret things differently. So like just my personal experience from being raised Catholic, there was a lot of stuff I needed to get over, a lot of stuff that the way it was presented to me and the way I interpreted it didn't make sense. So when I woke up 21 years ago and I'm like, okay, now I believe in this higher power that I call God, and that, well, I didn't call it God back then because I had to make peace with the Catholic religion, namely, and secondarily some of the other religions, because I had processed things in a way that didn't make sense. So I was like, what the heck? This religious stuff doesn't make sense. Now I understand it. And I don't agree with 100% of it. But I understand it a lot better. And a lot more of it makes sense to me now, because I looked at it through spiritual eyes. So if anybody hasn't done that, I highly recommend you do. It's really a good thing to do. And I think it's necessary, because if we are harboring resentments towards anything or anyone, including institutions, it's going to block our spiritual growth. So if you have resentments towards religion, I recommend that you work through that, because there are other ways to look at it other than resentfully. So like prayer was one of these things I needed to look at. So my chair's off a little. I'll fix it later. So prayer is one of these things that is I had to look at. And like, I'm like, okay, well, I have to come to an understanding. I'm not going to pray if I don't understand it. You know, like people throw that word out there. Oh, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for this. I'll pray for that. I'll pray for that. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, what does it do? How would that work? You know? So I needed to understand how it made sense before I did it. So to me, to gain perspective on things, I go as far back as I have to gain perspective. And everything is chaos theory, in my opinion. If you step far enough back, you can gain perspective on basically anything. So I step way back on this, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pray to a God, I need to understand how that God interacts with reality here on earth. Right? Otherwise, what am I doing? Why would I, like, if I don't understand how prayer works, why would I do it? Like, it just doesn't, and it's hypothetical. I don't know 100%, but I need to have some sort of idea that makes some sort of logical sense. So I look at it and I go, okay, well, prayer. So that means, like, I'm going to pray to God, like, to what? Do something for me, help me, change something. Like, what am I, what am I going to pray for? And I'm like, well, I don't think God, I understand God doesn't do for us what we do for ourselves. I've heard that. So what does that mean? How does that play into this? And I stepped further back and I went, okay, well, what's the dynamic between God and us? Like, God is our creator. So if God is our creator, and he must have I don't mean he literally. So if that slips out, bear with me. Must have designed some sort of system. There's divine intelligence everywhere. So it must be some sort of system how it interacts. So, like, how does God interact with humans? It's like, well, God won't do for us what we can do for ourselves. So the other side of that, I always like to look at both sides. God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves. I'm like, okay. So that's one dynamic. And I looked at it and I was like, well, why will God only do things that we can't do for ourselves? Like, why didn't God fix me when I was all messed up on alcohol and stuff? And again, I was like, well, we have free will. I'm like, ooh, that's a big piece. That's got to be a big piece. Free will. God gave us free will. So we have to choose to open our hearts to God. God can't come down and make us open our hearts to him. Well, why? See, these are the conversations I have with myself. Why? Well, because why would we have to choose? And I was like, well, choice is everything. Like, that's what love is based on. The whole, that saying, if you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, it's yours. If it doesn't, it never was. See, that implies freedom of choice. So God wants us to choose him. Why? Well, because that's love. That's love based. What's the opposite? So like I said, I like to look at things both sides, right? So what's the opposite of love as far as what we're talking about here? And I would be like, well, that would be control. Like, if God came down to earth and made us do things against our free will, even though, in other words, even though we didn't choose it, that if we didn't choose it, that means it's against our free will. Okay. So if God came down and did things that we didn't choose, what would that be called? What energy is that? Well, that's control. Okay. So control, as soon as something controls another thing, then that is a different energy than free will, than choice, than love. So control is not love. And you can see this playing out in relationships. Where does resentment come from when one person tries to control another person? Why do most teenagers rebel against their parents? Because they've been controlling them. Now I'm not saying that we shouldn't give consequences to our children and raise them and everything. That's another podcast. But my point is the animosity comes from control, right? So it's because it's a different energy. Control is not love. It's not what that. They're different energies. They're different vibrations. So God is based in love. Everything he does must come from love, which implies free choice, allowing us to choose, allowing us to decide where our life goes, what we do, how we live it, not only individually, but collectively. I mean, we're not just individuals, we're a collection of individuals. So if individuals have free will, then guess what a collection of individuals has? Free will, right? So we have to choose it. So to me, I'm like, okay, this is starting to make sense. Now I understand why God isn't coming in and doing things. Like, one of the big things against God, people have against God is they say, well, how can God let children starve all over the world? Well, God has nothing to do with it. We, as collective human beings, are making children starve all over the world. We have more than enough money. We have more than enough food, but we don't put the effort into sending food to everybody. That's our free will. That's our free choice. We are choosing not to feed people. As human beings, we are choosing to let some starve while others have. That's our collective free will choice. God cannot come in and change that. Can't. Because it would break the foundational law in which God and his creation has. The creator-creation dynamic is based on pure unconditional love, which implies complete free will, complete freedom of choice, without interruption from the boss. It's the foundation of it. You can't break a foundational law of a dynamic and then just expect things to go on. Oh, well, maybe it's because we do it in regular life, we rationalize our behaviors. Well, yeah, but this case is really bad, and we'll go make an exception and pretend there's no consequences to that or something, but God knows better. You can't, like, this is why, like, I often say, like, in my perception, I feel that I understand dynamics. I understand spiritual law. I understand things like this, how the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, how these laws that we've heard of over, thousands of years through prophets and religions and sages and all this stuff, they've explained all this stuff for thousands of years. And once you understand it, you can go back and be like, oh my God, they were all right. Like, when I see that, I'm pretty sure that I'm on the right track. And if I'm not, well, there's been people being fooled like this for thousands of years, and it makes sense to me. So I'm just going to stick with it. So this is just how I see things. If you don't, God bless you. You have the right to think of it your own way. This is how I make an understanding of things. And it seems to work well for me. So this is why I don't pray for social issues. Like, people like, oh, I'm going to pray for the United States. There's lots of problems there. Well, what's that going to do? Like, was God going to come down and fix problems in the United States? Like, how? Like, why? What? Because it's affecting us. So, like, I just don't understand the mentality behind it, because I don't just say things. I want to understand them before I put my energy towards them. So this is the stuff I look at, and I understand that not everybody looks at things like this or dives deep down or even agrees if they do a deep dive. Maybe they just won't agree. But like, I'm not going to pray for the United States, because the United States is a collection of people who, through their free will, they are allowing their so-called leaders to just piss away money and not tell them where it's going, just start wars or participate in wars and go kill people, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, they're just, and we're just sitting back going, well, geez, it shouldn't happen. I'm not happy about it. Okay, well, but so by free will, we're just sitting back and going, well, they're in control. The government is just going to decide what's going to happen, and we're just, it's not up to us. So we just have to sit by, which isn't true. You know, I mean, it's never, you know, a society collapsing, believe it or not, has happened before in history, like tons of times. So like, the society is collapsing. You know, I mean, this time I think it's a global society, but still, it's just a society collapsing. And how does it always collapse? It's like, well, when the people at the bottom suffer, because the people at the top only know greed and to take, then eventually their life gets bad enough where they say enough is enough, and then they stand up, and then things change. That's how it happens. I don't think it's going to happen through war. I think it's going to happen more through like India, you know, like the Gandhi movement, you know, because I mean, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Fight the US government? I mean, of course not. So like, you know, but we cannot comply. That's what we can do. And we can shut down the entire country by not complying. That's what India did. You know, that's what Gandhi did. Just said there's no use in, like, England was the government, and they said, we own your country. You guys have to do what we say, and we're going to take all the money and blah, blah, blah. And the people said, no. So the government tried force and all that stuff, and they stood strong, and they said, still no. So then England walked out. They didn't fight them. There was no war. There was no military war. England just left because they couldn't control the people. So if a government can't control, if 300 people can't control millions or hundreds of millions or whatever, what are they going to, they're going to change. They have to. They steal your money. Like, if they can't steal your money anymore because you're not participating and you're not making them any money, what are they going to do? Right. So anyway, I got to get off that topic. So I think change is going to come from non-compliance, basically. But I'm not going to sit back and like pray. Like, what is God going to do? Like, I don't even understand what pray for the United States. I don't even understand what that means. Like, so like some spiritual lightning bolt is going to go up the president's ass, and then all of a sudden he's going to start trying to do things differently, and then he's going to try overrunning Congress and expect nobody in Congress to assassinate him or something. I don't even know. Like, that's why I don't do it, because this is why I do deep dives on this stuff, because somebody is like, I'm going to pray for the United States. And I'm like, does that make sense? I'm always asking, does that make sense? What does that mean? What's the dynamic underneath of that before I just go do something because it sounds good? So I'm looking at it and I'm going, that's not how prayer works. Like, that we have free will. We're consciously choosing or unconsciously choosing. It doesn't really matter. We're choosing to do this. You know, and God can't be like, well, this whole creation is based on love, but there's some people suffering in the United States in ways they're not used to. So I'm going to start throwing spiritual lightning bolts up the government's ass so we can change things. Like, no, that's not going to happen. It would have happened in India, and it would have happened in Africa, and it would have happened in Germany, and it would have happened. The only way things change is if we change them. That's because God can't do for us what we have to do for ourselves. We have to do this for ourselves. If we want God in our reality, we have to open up and invite God in. Or just open up. You don't actually have to take any effort. He's there, just waiting. I had this visual of God. Like I was struggling one time many years ago, and I was like, and I just had this visual of this bulkhead. Some of you will know what that is. It's a bulkhead. Like, I grew up in the Northeast where they dig a cellar, a foundation down underneath, and then build the house on top. So like a lot of houses had this bulkhead with a few steps going down into the cellar from the back of the house. So, and what was unique about that, I think why I get this visual, is if you were down in a cellar and you were coming up those 3 or 4 steps, whatever, the door is slanted like this. So you had to open it up sideways and open the other one up like this, and you could walk out. And if you're listening to this on audio, I just did a visual, so good luck. But especially if you don't know what a bulkhead door is, Google it. So I just envisioned myself like on the 3rd step or whatever, just holding this bulkhead door shut that was slanted to the sky. And I'm just holding it shut. And then I'm going, where's God? Where's God? Where's God? And then I just push open the bulkhead door, and there's this sun shining on, this love coming down. That's God, right? And I was like, that's what it is. It's like we just keep the door shut, and it's just up to us to open the door, and God's there. He's always there, shining down with pure, unconditional love, right there, ready to help in any way that doesn't break the law of love and control, and just right there for us. So we have to open. So if we want God to come into the United States, we have to open up to God, not our neighbor. Not our neighbor. We don't have to pray for our neighbor to open up to God. We don't have to say, oh, I hope more people hear this podcast so they'll open up to God. No, don't worry about other people. There was this meme I saw that I liked. It said, like, just one of me is not enough to change the world, said 5 billion people. Right? We're so concerned about what everybody else is doing, and that, oh, how many people do we need to open up to change the world? Don't worry about it. You want to know why? Because you have no control over them. That's why. Just worry about yourself. Like one person, like the energy of love is, well, I've seen different statistics. Some say it's like 100 times stronger than any other love. Some people, I think, say it's 1,000 times stronger. Whatever. If you're 25% open to love, you opening to 50% is going to make a huge impact. 75% huge, 100% even more. And that's your journey. That's it. It's not worrying about what other people are doing or where they are or how many people we have now, or going, well, I'm not going to spend my time opening to God because nobody else is doing it. And really, why waste my time? Like, just take care of you. You open to God, because that's all you're in control of. And if each person does that, it'll make an impact. It'll make a huge impact. And that's how we're going to change. It's how change has always taken place. I've said this before, like, slavery didn't end because Lincoln did something. It's not why. Slavery ended because more people in the country thought it was wrong than thought it was right. Inside, like just inside of them, more people thought it was wrong than thought it was right. Now, some of them were acting out. Some of them were taking action externally. So some people will do that. And then we can have figureheads like Lincoln was in that case to incite action and have the courage to do that. And, I'm not minimizing what they're doing. I'm saying they didn't do it. What did it was the collective energy from the people within. Change always takes place grassroots. So just us change ourselves. We were not made, none of us were made to be in control of other people. So if we were supposed to wait and just being control other people, see what I just said? Control is not love. Don't try to control. Don't worry about what other people are doing, because we have no control over that. We only have control over ourselves. So just work on opening you, doing your best. If there's action you can take, we all have different talents, some people will be spreading this message like I'm doing. Who knows? Maybe at some point I'll end up working with somebody that's a figurehead for this movement of love or whatever. And maybe there's some political figure or something else that wants to incite some change. And I'm working with them behind the scenes, kind of keeping them grounded and explaining dynamics to them to help them or something. Maybe that'll be my job. Who knows? But my point is when there is action that we can take to help, then we take the action to help. But the main thing is changing us within. That's how things are going to change, because we have free will. So prayer ain't going to work. You know what I pray for? I pray for awareness mostly, because of that, what I was saying earlier. God won't do for us what we can do for ourselves, but God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves, right? So one thing that I found was, like, I couldn't get sober until I was ready, right? So until I had awareness of what the solution was, things like that. So I pray for awareness, because, like, if I'm attempting to change something and I don't have awareness, like, let's say something triggers me, right? And I notice a pattern and I'm like, man, every time this happens, I get triggered. Well, the best way to change something when it's triggering you, of course, you can dive into it and stuff. But even after you do I'm not going to go too deeply into the reframing and the releasing of energy and all that stuff. But really, I did a podcast on this. There's three main parts of change: intellectual, conceptual, and physical. So intellectually, I need to change the way I'm looking at it. Conceptually, I need to understand it and release any trapped energy around it and adopt a new way. And then physically, I have to actually stand and behave in a different way in a similar situation. So that actually changes my vibration. So if I'm trying to stand in a situation and change the way I interact with that situation to a healthier way, how can I do that if I'm triggered on an unconscious level before and react before I have a chance to choose how I act? I can't, right? So this is why I'll pray for awareness, because I'll be like, hey, I want to change this part of me, but I find myself getting triggered before I can consciously choose to act a different way. So could you please give me awareness? Could you let me know when this is coming up? Can you give me that moment of, hey, this is happening, so I can be aware of it, so I can consciously choose to do something different? And that I found works very well. Why? Because it works with the dynamic that I explained. God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves, but God won't do for us what we can't do for ourselves, what we can do for ourselves, right? So if you take those two into consideration and you apply it into a real life example, and you go, okay, well, I can't change something if I'm not even aware of what I need to change, or I get triggered before I can change it. So I need awareness. But when God gives me that awareness, when I pray for it and then I get it, it's my responsibility to actually choose to behave differently in that situation. I can't just shrug it off and say, like, well, I'm busy at work right now. I know I said I was going to behave differently when I prayed for awareness, but I just got too much to do right now, and blow it off and then just go on. I can't do that. I mean, I can, but life isn't going to go well. How do I know this? I've tried it. It doesn't work well. So when I ask for awareness, I'm taking it seriously. So when that awareness comes, I'm like, whoa, okay, I have to choose to behave differently. I have to choose to behave differently. I asked for this awareness. I was blessed with the awareness. Now I have to take advantage of that awareness. Otherwise, I'm running around asking God for stuff. And then when he gives it to me, I'm just blowing him off. Not a good relationship builder. That's another way I figure out how to interact with God. I envision it as a relationship. So I heard one time, like, prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening to God. So, and I use these same examples of, I think I started not praying for things for myself, like, oh, I want this, I want that, please God, make my life easier, or, stuff like that. I stopped doing that type of stuff. And then I expanded it to collectively. So I don't pray for collective issues, social issues, because like I said, the social issues, which by issues, I mean problems, those are a result of our free will choices. That's why they're there. We could solve we could solve all the world's problems if we attempted to. We just don't attempt to. That's why I don't believe in politics, because I think it's a waste of time. Like, I've been alive 56 years. I haven't seen politics really solve anything. It's helped a few things, since I've been alive. It's helped. But even when it's helped, I think it's because it didn't have a choice. I don't think it was because it was trying to help. Like, with women's rights and equal rights, I think the political changes that were made to help that along were mandatory. Like, I don't like, what were they going to do? Say no? I think the pressure from the people became too much until it forced them to make legal changes. I don't think they made legal changes because they were trying to help things. It's just not their goal. It's not, if you look at politics, the goal is not to solve social issues. It's not, because if it was, we would have solved some of them by now, and we haven't. So, if you put energy towards something, you're going to achieve it. We put a man on the moon. Well, some people disagree, but we'll assume it's true for this podcast. We built skyscrapers. We accomplished all kinds of amazing things. Why? Because we put energy towards it. You're telling me that we can't feed people? Of course we can. We're not trying to. It's not the goal. The goal of government is power. That's the goal. It's power and greed. So have people in politics acquired power? Yes, they have. Have they acquired money? Yes, they have. Has that expanded? Has the money and power expanded over the last, we'll just say 56 years since I've been alive? Yes. Okay, so would it be fair to say that that's their goal? Yes. Why? Because they've achieved it. That's why. If they consistently put energy into acquiring more money and more power, and then, do you think they got more money and more power on accident? Like, they just tripped. They were busy trying to solve the world's problems. All their effort was going to solving the world's problems. And then they turned around, they went, oh my God, how did we end up with all this power and money? Whoops. Oh, can we give it back? Well, no. It's already ours. So we'll just keep it. Do you think that's what happened? No, it was been their goal the whole time. That's why they achieved it, because they put energy towards it. If we put energy towards solving our problems, we would solve our problems. You know, we will, or we won't be on this planet much longer. Either way, I'm eternal, so I'm good. So, you know, it's important to understand the dynamic of prayer and our free will. What is within our capability and what isn't. And it's not just, you know, like, I think one of the reasons why I did this is because one of the reasons why it kind of this stuff catches my attention. I'll just say it that way. Okay. The reason that this stuff catches my attention is because what I see, one of the reasons that we don't focus on change and we're not changing anything is because we're rationalizing our behavior. We're not looking at things realistically, in my opinion. So, like, people navigate their way around staying stuck. Right. This is one of the things that I have to work with as a life coach. I have to see how people are keeping themselves stuck and then shine a light on it and bring it to their attention, because they can often not see it themselves. Right. So, of course, over the years, I interact with life like this. And it's so what I see is I see people going, oh, I'm going to pray for the United States, or I'm going to pray for the world, or I'm going to pray for world peace, or I'm going to pray for something. And it makes them feel good, right? Because it's a nice thought. It's, you know, in my opinion, it has no merit. It has no qualifications. It's some pie in the sky woo-woo idea that's not going to change anything. People have been praying for their countries for the last 100,000 years. It hasn't fixed anything yet. I don't know why we think it's going to fix something now. You know, like, it always killed me. Like, you know, these you see it in movies sometimes, you know, back, you know, decades and hundreds of years ago. It's like that they're like, you know, the two countries are at war, and, you know, one side is saying, like, you know, we have God on our side, and the other side saying we have God on our side. And I'm like, God's not on either one of your sides. God says thou shalt not kill. So you guys killing each other and telling everybody that you're doing God's work is ridiculous. But this is where it started, right? Like, we've got this fallacy with, like, it doesn't even make sense. But people say it because it makes them feel good. And I think we need to stop doing that, because it stops us from changing. Is whenever we do something that sounds good or seems good, even on a surface level, we get this positive feedback on an egoic level. It doesn't really change anything. It doesn't really help us grow or change. Nothing changes. It's just we don't suffer so much. So we're like, oh my God, look at all these problems. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. This is horrible. We need to change something. We need to change something. What can I do? I don't know. I'll pray. There you go. I'm a good person. Okay, I'll pray. And then we walk away and we feel like we did something. And then we can handle the uncomfortability from the dysfunction that's all around us a little bit longer for 3 more hours. And then we have to pray again or the next day. And then we have to say we're praying again. And say a prayer. Oh, please, God, help us. And then we feel like we did something, and then we can stay stuck. Like, so if we're actually going to change something, I think it would be beneficial if we actually stopped rationalizing this type of stuff and actually understood what we were saying and what we were doing a little bit more. You know what I mean? So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with prayer. Like, so even if you think I'm wrong, so if you think I'm wrong, fine, continue praying, but just don't let that replace action. You know, like, work at least, like, if you think prayer is going to do something, well, kind of give God a helping hand with your action too. You know, maybe that. So yeah, I just think we need to slow down from this this meme society that we're in, that we just say things because they sound good and we don't even understand what we're saying or thinking we're doing. And then we wonder why we're in the same place or worse 5 years later. It's because we're not doing anything. We're just navigating our way around staying stuck. I think Beckwith said that. I always like that. We're navigating our way around staying stuck. We're pretending to grow. We're, like, oh yeah, I'm enlightened. I want love in the world. And just bring it in your heart. Expand the love in your heart. Really, I mean, I think bringing love into this world is a lot easier than people think. So really, instead of, just in my opinion, instead of saying a prayer for the United States, I think what you should do is work on not judging people, bringing more love into your heart, interacting with the people in your life in a more loving way. You could grow something. I know, to me, it kind of sounds silly, but it's like, just do anything good, man. Even enjoying your life is a step in the right direction. Just because your energy field is experiencing joy, that helps the joy collectively. Buy yourself flowers every week and keep them on your table. I just found out my neighbor has flowers in his house all the time. He said he was grabbing some flowers, and they're beautiful flowers. And I was like, wow, those are amazing. And he's like, yeah. And I said, oh, you're bringing some in the house? He's like, yeah, I have flowers in my house all the time. And I was like, that's such a good thing to do. Because you just see them every once in a while. It makes you feel good, but grow something. Just like anything to get your hands touching the earth. Like it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just bring more love into your life and goodness, and do the right things. I don't know. Exercise, eat healthy, go to church an extra day, and don't just pray, meditate. What kind of a relationship is only one way, where you're always talking to God? What about listening? Have a two-way relationship with God, where you're talking to God so you can pray, but you also listen to God so you can meditate and try to get insights and ideas and input on how you can make your life better personally. So I think I'm going to wrap up with that. So yeah, it's the foundation is our free will. And it cannot be based in control. It has to be based in love. So when we're praying, we have to be really conscious and careful about what we're praying for. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. And it's not going to change anything, in my opinion. It's never has. So I don't know why it would suddenly start now. Can you imagine if, like, all of a sudden, like, some of the problem, like even one problem, just got fixed somehow? And like the humans didn't really do anything, and everybody was like, oh my God, we prayed for God and it worked. So like, actually, there is one more thing I need to say on this topic. I had no idea I was going to talk about this part. So here is, prayer is collective positive input. Okay. So this might be another podcast. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm just not going to dive too deep into it, because I think that there's going to be a little contradictions here, which just bear with me, because I don't have time to go all into this. But there have been experiments where people, I think it happened once in Chicago and once somewhere else, maybe Seattle or something, and probably more, where people got together and they got a group of people and they got them to basically pray. But I think it was kind of more of a meditation. Okay. So what they were doing is they were meditating on peace. and they got like 700 people. I think I just saw one of these things talked about the other day. So they get like 700 people, and they were meditating on peace. Okay. And what happened was the crime rate dropped dramatically for like 30 days while they were meditating on peace. See, to me, that's different than praying for peace, because praying for peace is like, hey, let's, oh, please, God, please bring peace. Like, prayer implies that you're praying to something to do something for you, right? Meditation implies that you're holding a particular energy of peace and projecting the idea that it can flood away from you out into society. Okay. And when you have large groups of people doing that, it can actually affect crime rates. Okay. So there is something to collective energy. So when that popped in, I was like, oh, okay, I better mention that because I didn't want to end the podcast implying that like putting out good energy didn't have some validity to it. It does. It's just how we do it. One, collectively is much more effective. And two, it's more about, like I said, there's a big difference between meditating and praying. Praying, you're asking for something, in my opinion. And if you pray differently, cool. But meditating is like holding a particular energy. It can also be listening to God, but there are more than one way to meditate. So we can meditate holding the frequency of peace and sending that to a particular area to lower a crime rate. And then all of a sudden it happens, which is cool. I think that's cool as all hell. But yeah, maybe I'll do another podcast on that, but I can't go any deeper into it. I got to wrap this up. So that's going to do it. So just think deeply about what you're doing. If you're going to do something, think about what you're doing and try to draw a line to how it's going to actually affect something. Like, even if it's hypothetical, just does it make any sense? Or are you just doing it or saying it to make yourself feel better? Because that's what we need to stop doing. We can't do things that mean nothing to make us feel better and then wonder why nothing changes. It's actually better if we suffer more. If we feel uncomfortability, we're so used to running from the feeling of uncomfortability. This is why people do it, is they feel uncomfortable. I alluded to this already. They don't like the way they feel because of the stuff that's happening, and they don't know what to do. So they do that. It's like, yeah, but how would that work? So if, like, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So this is why I say praying just to make yourself feel good doesn't help, because it's an illusion that gets you away from experiencing the uncomfortability. The uncomfortability is the very thing that's going to spark your creativity, that's going to find a creative way to help solve problems. Maybe change your own life. Like, maybe if I'll keep it simple to wrap it up. Like, if you allow yourself to feel the uncomfortability that you're feeling because of the world's problems, then maybe it can push you to do some more inner work, to find more peace. The place of peace that's within all of us is a place of peace, and that needs to be our anchor. And if you're experiencing enough uncomfortability, then you'll go seeking that and find the uncomfortability. But if you just, every time you feel uncomfortable, you say you're going to say a prayer, and then it makes you feel better, and then the next day you say another prayer, you never feel enough of that uncomfortability to push you to find that inner peace. See, that uncomfortability, that's what drives change. So don't do pseudo things that are putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm that don't actually do anything to make yourself feel better, because you're actually blocking yourself from being pushed to make the real changes, the real impact in your own life. And who knows, depending on who you are, maybe other people's lives. So allow yourself to feel that uncomfortability and allow it to push you into finding a creative way to either find the peace within yourself or to do something external, whatever that looks like for you. So, all right, that'll do it. So thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk with you soon. Peace.